Hi, this is Phillip Pierorazio. I am a urologic oncologist and the chief of urology at Penn Presbyterian Hospital at the University of Pennsylvania. You are listening to Interview with the Surgeon Agent.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining Interview with the Surgeon. Today we welcome Dr. Phillip Pierorazio, chief of urology at Penn. Doc, how are we doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being with us. So, getting started, what were your goals and aspirations during your residency?
Yeah, I went to residency at Johns Hopkins, and part of the goal of being there was to pursue a career in academic medicine. So my first goal was to be at a place that I knew I would have excellent surgical training, and Hopkins checked those boxes. And then the second was to really be at a place where I didn't have to kind of invent or create the academic infrastructure. That stuff was there. So as a resident, when I had limited time and limited resources available to me, I could kind of work with what was already existing to kind of build the foundations of an academic career. Obviously, the first job I wanted out of residency was going to be an academic position, so I had to build a little foundation.
So kind of taking us through your chief year, what was your mentality like heading into the job search for the first time, and how that perspective changed the beginning years of your career?
Yeah, it was an interesting time. And we don't get a lot of training in this in residency. So I think all of us struggle to kind of figure this out. So when I was applying for jobs, it just so happened right place at the right time, which is often the story for a lot of us. But Hopkins needed a surgeon and an academic surgeon who did what I was interested in. So I knew I had that option available to me. But Alan Parton, who was the chair at that time and was a good mentor, gave me good advice. He said, "I'm not hiring you unless you go interview at least 3 other places." And you really need to get out there and see what else is being offered, see what other places look like. Otherwise, you get kind of a little happy in our comfort zone. And, physicians and surgeons are people too. And we get really happy where we're comfortable. And sometimes it's hard to break out of those routines. And so by forcing me to go out and look at other places, I learned what I needed and wanted at Hopkins, which ultimately ended up being my first job.
So you just took the chief position over at Penn right now. Can you kind of talk about that journey that led you to this position?
Yeah. And to be honest with you, 8 years ago when I started in my faculty positions, I would not have predicted this move. I was really happy being a soldier. I like taking care of patients. I love operating. I love doing my research, and I like being left alone. And I think we all evolve through our careers. And I think that's one of the only thing that's constant is that we're going to evolve and change. And I used to have conversations a lot with my dad. My dad was an educator. He started off as a high school history teacher, and he finished his career as a superintendent of schools. And he said, I never wanted to be a superintendent of schools. That was never on my checklist, never on my career goals. But you just find your skills evolve, your interests evolve, and you can become more useful in higher roles. And I think that's kind of where I am now. I did a lot of academic work. I did a lot of pretty good research. Not to toot my own horn, but I think I did some pretty good research and made some nice contributions to the field. So I checked off a lot of boxes early on in things I wanted to do. And I started to become much more interested in those underneath me and those around me. So the trainees, the residents, the fellows, my junior partners, how could I elevate their career? How could I make them more successful? And that gave me a lot of joy. And so this position came about at Penn, and Tom Guzzo is the chief of urology. I'm the chair of urology. I'm the chief at Presbyterian Hospital. And this is an unbelievable kind of mix of leadership without having to deal with the budgets and all of the stuff that the chairperson does. But I get to grow the faculty underneath me here at Presbyterian Hospital. I get to grow the junior faculty in urologic oncology, and I still have a really tight role with the residents and fellows at our institution. So I'm still doing the research and the academics I want to do, but now I have a much larger role, and what interests me now is growing the people around me.
So along your journey, what would you say were some of the keys to your success that shaped your early career that allowed you to climb the ranks in the academic world?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing as a junior faculty member is learning when to say no. And early on in your career, you should say yes a lot, especially to your boss, right? Make your bosses happy. And saying yes to a lot of things allows you to kind of dip your toes in a variety of areas and find what you find interesting. But at some point you have to make the switch from saying yes to saying no, and really focusing and carving kind of in one direction. Or at least it doesn't have to be one, tight direction, but at least in a general direction. And what ends up happening if you don't is you waste a lot of energy and time, which are our most valuable resources, without making progress, without making a contribution. And so when I talk to residents, fellows, my junior faculty, I say, yes, you have to participate in a variety of things. That's what's going to grow the length of your CV. But you really want to focus on what gets you excited, what is really interesting to you, and move in that direction. And I think that's really good advice. I can't remember actually getting that advice, but I think it's something I kind of lucked into. And I had some really good mentorship and some really good friends and people who would kind of, I think, pushed me in one direction and told me when to say no. And so now I'm thinking back on those things, I try to make it more explicit for people I'm working with.
With your involvement with residents and fellows, what advice do you have for them entering the professional job market for the first time?
Yeah, so I think the biggest piece of advice is seek out multiple options, right? Just to see what else is available for you, just to see what else is out there, so you understand what the market holds. And that will give you bargaining power at the job you ultimately want. That'll allow you understand how other markets work and how other people are thinking about you and your job and your ultimate role. And I think you really want to find strong mentors, and you don't want just a mentor. You want mentors. You want people in a variety of settings, people who have a variety of experiences, people at the beginning of the career, people at the end of their career, and talking to multiple people will help you kind of gain perspective, recognizing you're not going to do exactly what any of those people did. You're going to follow your own path, but learning from others is certainly how we move forward.
Now, you know that I work with residents and fellows all across the country, and a big conversation we have a lot is the networking process of, how do I connect with folks like yourself? Ideally, we would be doing that at national conferences. So far this year, they're kind of a hit and miss. Some are virtual, some are not. What advice do you have for that in that process?
Yeah, networking is huge. I think one of the big things is just being present at the meetings and being present in the rooms that interest you. Right. So for a kidney cancer researcher, I'm in the kidney cancer rooms, and that's the networking I'm building. And that's how I built a lot of collaborations in research. And that doesn't mean kidney cancer research interests everybody, or that's the room you should be in. You should find the rooms that interest you, whether that's a specific disease, a specific organ state, or a business model, or an academic medical center versus the large urologic practice groups, the community groups. Find the people you're interested in, and that'll help you connect. It is hard now that a lot of these meetings are canceled and we're not seeing each other face to face. The other thing I rely on a lot, where I have a lot of great collaborations, is social media. I find Twitter incredibly useful for keeping myself up to date on what's going on in the urology world, but also networking and talking with other people. You see, there's phenomenal people out there with phenomenal ideas, and you can really pick their brains. You can learn from other people. You may not agree with what they're saying, but you can definitely learn and network virtually as well now.
As a quick flashback to your career, you did medical school, you did residency, you're at Hopkins, now you're at Penn. Before you started this whole journey, what advice would you have given your younger self?
Yeah, I think in reflection, the advice I give most people now is, when you're uncertain, take the option that leaves the most doors open. Right? You never want to narrow your options down. And often and trust your gut. Most of us know what we want, and we often need to validate that, especially as physicians and doctors. You want to look at the data. We often know what the right answer is, but now we want to find all of the evidence to support that decision before we jump into it. And that could be in medicine when you're taking care of a patient. That could be when you're signing your contract at a new place. This could be signing a mortgage on your house. We know what the right decision is, but we want to find the evidence to support that. So trust your gut. And when you're not sure, choose the path that gives you the most options.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Interview with the Surgeon. Until next time, stay focused and keep following your dreams.